Well, great. Paul Hedrick, what's your official title at SCI with regard to the Wiki?
I am now the Wiki administrator,
Okay.
and I'm basically a staff of one. I do primarily everything on the Wiki is done by me directly. I began working with Tom Sponheim, who originally created the Solar Cooking Archive in the mid-90s, and then he partnered up with Solar Cookers International in the early 2000s, and then in 2006 created the Solar Cooking Wiki in its current format, which is an amazing software that is offered by, the group is now called, it used to be Wikia, but now it's Fandom. It is primarily used for online gaming, wikis and things like that. We're a little bit separate from what that world, certainly, but it offers so much editing flexibility. It offers a platform that can be changed daily and updated daily, so much differently than a more static typical wiki where you go return back to a site and it hasn't been changed in a couple months and you're less likely to come back and look at it again. So there are literally every day new information is being added to the wiki.
And when did you join this whole effort?
I began working with Tom, who is a former neighbor. We were friends before this. And even my son, Ben, began helping Tom initially in the early 2000s with doing some editing on the wiki, because otherwise it was primarily just Tom. And then my son left for college, and they needed someone to step in. And Tom asked if I was interested. And initially I was somewhat intimidated. Technology is not my background. But I jumped in and realized I was interested in the solar cooking and the technology and how it worked, and I was sort of fascinated by it. And it worked out well. So I formally became an employee of Solar Cookers International in 2010, I think.
Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, 14 years.
So it's been a while. It was just noted that I am the longest lasting employee of Solar Cookers International at this point.
Okay.
And but I enjoy the people that I work with, and it's fascinating to be in communication with people all over the world and hear firsthand what they're doing and communicating with them. It's different than just reading news articles of what's going on in the world.
Sure. Well, tell me about a typical day or a week of how you keep on top of things, because this. You think I call solar cooking a niche of a niche of a niche, the little
well, it is that, and maybe that's because it works because it's just me, so.
But it's a diverse topic.
It is a diverse topic, but my background is also, I'm a professional architect, and I've been mostly self-employed for most of my career. And so you learn early on, you need to be responsible, predictable, and productive if you plan to stay in business. And I developed those skills, and you can't be a procrastinator. So I learned early on, you got to accomplish something every day, do something, move the ball forward. And so when the wiki came along and the work was available, I realized, okay, I'm still doing architectural work, but I can devote mornings for it works out to about a couple hours a day in the morning. I'll work on wiki-related activities. And then I shift over to doing other things in the afternoon. So that's how basically I've been able to stay on top of things. And as far as sourcing information, on a simple basis, I have one of my email accounts set up on Google Alerts. So if anything with the word solar cooking, solar cooker, or the like shows up in any sort of media article, I get an alert that, take a look at this. It might be something that you would find valuable. So there is that. I'm also, because I've been involved with the solar cooking community at this point and have met a number of people will send me information directly to me about what they're doing. And then I monitor a variety of solar cooking related Facebook groups, in particular the Solar Cookers World Network that Luther is also a moderator with, and I am, and I have to put in a plug for Luther. He does such an amazing job. And people will post to the Facebook group with what they're doing related, and sometimes we're a little frustrated that people won't, in theory, be able to edit and post things on directly to the wiki. And we've tried some outreach programs to say, here, this is how you edit, and created little videos. But then it turns out that fandom that has the underlying software, they'll update it and change things enough to make basically what we were trying to explain irrelevant. And that happens about every 3 years or 4 years. So it's easier if people have information, they can just email me directly, paul@solarcookers.org. And then I get it directly, and then I can add it up, I can ask questions from you, and basically it means uploading YouTube videos. Only YouTube is the only platform we're able to upload these days onto the wiki. But photographs and certainly text is not a problem. And then there's a lot of interlink that happens within the wiki, because all of these subjects are related together, and so as I'm writing about something, posting something, I'm also putting in the hot links to take you over to another article on the wiki, and it's related, and so there's a lot of back and forth with what goes on. And currently we have about 1,800 articles on the wiki. So there's certainly an element of administration and maintenance that needs to be happening. I mentioned before that I just finished a review of several hundred articles that we have sort of have a category that is verified active 2019, verified active 2020, that I've gone through and brought everything up to verified active 2024. So we try not to have any dead ends on the wiki. So far, it's worked out pretty well.
Sure. So in the morning, probably, I don't know, I have a Google or two that comes at like 6:30 in the morning, and some days I think it should come at like 9 at night when I'm too tired to really, look at all of them. But, so you got one of these, and you see something like, oh, I've never heard of this guy before. Describe the process for getting that onto the wiki.
It's pretty simple, because that alert comes with a link. If it's to a magazine article, to a website, wherever it showed up, I can go directly to that link and then is this about some third graders that got together and made s'mores with pizza boxes, Yes, technically that's solar cooking and it's charming, but we have enough information on that, So I skip over other related things. But if there's something, a new introductory program, somebody's been, some NGO has been doing somewhere, or someone has come up with a new design, or kind of big news right now is there's a fellow in Marseille in France that's opening the first really brick and mortar solar cooker restaurant, which is a big deal, that is just opening this month.
June 11th, I think?
Coming up, yeah. And so we've got quite a bit of information about that. And so everything, we have articles about individuals and NGO groups, manufacturers and the like, but we also have a separate article on about 150 different countries. So other people with SCI, in particular Caitlin Hughes, the executive director, she goes to a lot of international conventions, meeting people from all over the world, and she says it's so valuable to meet someone and they're sort of, what's solar cooking? I've not heard of it. I wonder if anyone in our country does this, and she can just simply give them the link to what's going on in their country, and they get back and they say that's really valuable. That really helps us see what is going on.
Sure. And so if it's something that's banking brand new, you make sure it gets up there.
Yeah, either I'll create an article or I'll add to an article, and I'll realize, it should probably also go in this article.
Sure. Okay. I'm trying to think of, we were talking earlier. So someone has new information on something that's already there, contact you. They've got a whole new cooker, contact you. Right?
That's the most direct and the easiest way, for sure. Often though, they'll put it first up on the Facebook group. and I'll see it there.
Sure.
And then follow up on that if they provide a link or whatever, or contact them directly to find out a little more information.
And what's your sense of how most people actually make use of the wiki? I mean, we'd agree that we'd love to see 10 times, 100 times as much interaction and views, but there must be a few hardcore people or even the occasional repeat topic or theme.
Yeah, as part of my duties, and again, it gets back to how wonderful the software is. Myself as an administrator, there are several people that are administrators, but I'm basically the only one that's active right now. I can go into a certain section only for administrators for the Wiki Analytics. And I can see total views that month. I can see what were the most viewed pages, even what countries they're coming from. And clearly the majority of the country pages are coming from the U.S. and probably second is India and some other European countries, but all around. And typically the wiki in the past has gotten up to 30,000 page views a month. It's a little bit off now. It's a little bit more like 20,000. And we're sort of entertaining ideas of how can we drive more eyeballs to the site. But even that's not bad. And most people hear about it. I mean, the main page you can go to is solarcooking.org. It will take you directly to the homepage.
Sure.
And it might be a little bit out of the 90s, but we sort of have an old-fashioned sitemap that runs down the side, which is pretty efficient and tells the stories and provides the links for a lot of different topics, from why is solar cooking important, how do solar cookers work, and so there's a lot of good information. And the other hurdle that I've been around long enough to see happen is the cultural variables that are involved with introductory programs, with trying to affect cultures and switch them over and see the light, so to speak, with beginning with solar cooking. And it has been a difficult task, and it requires a lot of follow-up. A lot of the early groups, NGOs that were creating simple solar cookers and showing up in some developing country in a small village and saying, these are inexpensive, great little solar cookers, this is how they work, and goodbye. Yeah. And people, were at a loss, and there weren't a lot of successes, but there's also issues of for some concern in some communities.
We have our guest.
Yes. That the men were upset that the women would have more free time now, and that is shifting. That sort of line of thought is shifting, because the reality is, people were mostly cooking over open fires, and a lot of it was happening indoors, and the rate of respiratory disease was sort of through the roof, so to speak, and offering an alternative to being able to cook food that way has saved lives, for sure. So, is there another part of that question?
That leads to the next one. It's okay, people want to find out about that stuff. I want to promote solar cooking somewhere else. I'm doing my gig here, for the longest time I had a day job, so I could only do my solar brunches, the occasional farmers market and so forth, but maybe I want to do a deeper dive and go overseas. How do I find, I'm going to be traveling with my church group to a country in Africa. Is there a a shortcut to get to those?
There aren't any shortcuts, really. In my experience. It's pretty involved. Even there's been problems in the past of importing materials into foreign countries and areas in certain, underdeveloped countries in Africa, where you'd think, oh my God, we could import, this mylar board and whatever, and we could make the cookers here and the like. And then there's government regulations on what they can import, and it's just kind of getting stifled almost at every turn. So it takes a lot of work. That said, we have a whole section on the wiki about promotion and advocacy, and you can learn about the cultural variables that are involved that you should be aware of trying to do an introductory program. We also have a section on evaluations. There's probably 30 or 40 evaluations of projects that have been done and then have gone back, and people people that originate the project, they'll go back and they'll review it and they'll talk about what worked and what didn't work. So there's a lot of information to draw upon. And because there's so much, if somebody were to email me directly, I could point them directly to a couple links if they were certainly totally interested in doing it.
Sure. And for people that are going to be seeing this, is there a construct to the web thing where they can just go right to the country thing with the template, with solarcooking.org/Uganda or something like that? Is there a shortcut that way to find stuff?
Yeah, there is. You can backslash, solarcooking.org / and the name of the country, but I would recommend just going to the homepage,
Sure.
seeing everything that's there, and there's clearly then the country links. We have a couple banner buttons at the top. Find your country, and so you get a list of countries, so you can look at yours and you realize, I should see what's going on in this country also as well. And then we have another banner button for buy a cooker, which lists all the different manufacturers and the designs that are available for sale. And we currently have designs on cookers that are manufactured, and also do-it-yourself versions. Another one button is make a cooker yourself, and simple cookers are pretty easy to fabricate with some tinfoil and a little bit of cardboard. We've kind of gotten away from recommending. It used to be we would enclose a black pot inside of a nylon, like a turkey roasting bag.
Right.
Was a popular way to create a greenhouse. So that basically the light comes in, it's converted to heat into infrared, and it can't get back out through that greenhouse enclosure. This is why your black car with a black interior gets hot in the parking lot. The light comes in, the interior gets hot, and it can't get back out, and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. I mean, that's the same rationale of what's going on. But what has happened is plastic pollution, as we're all aware of, is a real problem. And Kenya, did kind of a stand-up thing a couple of years ago and saying, we're outlawing plastic bags. The landfills they're overflowing with all this stuff.
And no exceptions for cooking bags.
And no exception for the cooking bag, but the other problem is oftentimes these communities where these projects begin, they have very limited water resources as well. Water pasteurization is also a big thing that solar cooking can be used for. So creating safe water to drink and to cook with, but it's still such a valuable commodity. So what happens with the bags is you have to physically undo the bag to get at the pot, to open up the lid to see how the cooking is going. And invariably, some of the material would get spilled into the plastic bag, and then there's no way to clean it. And then that bag needs to be replaced. So this is a little bit of a conundrum, because in the U.S., the emphasis is just sort of gone to what works really well. And in my own system, when I cook, I use 2 3-quart Pyrex bowls, hemispheres, that a 3-quart graniteware pot just nestles right in there. And then another 3-quart Pyrex bowl on top to create this sort of globe makes an absolutely excellent greenhouse for solar cooking. That said, those are difficult to import, and they're fragile to a certain extent. So maybe it has shifted more in certain areas to a lot of these groups are creating box cookers that can incorporate a plane of glass on the top to kind of create the greenhouse. It's a little simpler if they don't have the glass bowls. But there's a lot of tutorial information that you can find on the wiki. And because there are so much information, it can be a little intimidating to navigate. And again, if there's a question, I'm personally happy to answer it and steer you in the direction to help you out.
The one issue I have, and it's the fandom folks probably have to solve it, is they do have that little search field, and you click on it, figure you could fill it in, but it goes to another place where you can fill it in, but you have to fill it in. It's not like you have to click on it again to get the text box in.
Yeah, we've wrestled with that for a number of years. We can't seemingly have a search bar align and take you directly to an article.
Right.
That said, there's 2 ways to do it. I mean, most people are aware of it, but maybe some aren't, that there's always a little looking glass or magnifying glass up in the corner. And you can click on that as well. And then there'll be a search bar. You add what
That's
you're looking
fine.
for,
Right.
and then it'll show you several variations. Or we tried to simulate that with the search bar that unfortunately is not so gratifying. You can't just type in what you want.
Right.
It takes you to that other line, and then you have to add it.
And the results when you search that way, are they sorted as the closest match to kind of
Yeah,
matches?
kind of.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
like Google. It's not a perfect world,
Yeah.
but it's pretty good.
Yeah. I've never felt like I've missed the boat because maybe I'll type in a name and the first thing they'll say is Uganda or India, and then I'll realize, well, they're in that, and they were played an important role in doing something there. So what I'm saying is, don't give up.
Yeah, no. I mean, if they've been active enough in solar cooking, most likely we'll have an individual article about that
Yeah.
individual, that you can go and read about them. But it's quick to pick up if their name has simply been mentioned with something that happened in Uganda. Then it'll go to the Uganda link as a possibility, and that's just sort of how it is.
Yeah. Can you think of any unique ways people have searched to find stuff and then acted on it? Because I mean, from my perspective, I love to satisfy my own curiosity, but I don't want to spend a lot of time just satisfying my curiosity. I want to be able to find some information I can use. Do you know any examples where it was a
Well,
guy who logged in and
It's more of I guess, over a longer period of time of a process. We'll find out an organization just began, and they'll have an initial project, and they'll find additional information on the wiki, and they'll respond to me personally that they're very thankful that they've been able to use the wiki to gather information to plan their next move.
Yeah.
But basically at that point, I have to sit back and wait. Will that next move happen? And often it will, and then that's good to see, and then I can add that information.
Cool. The Le Passage restaurant, I have to get that. My visit with them last July, it was during the Council Foods Conference, which just after edited. Before that, I'm like, oh man, did I miss the scoop or what? I was hoping I could make it, but I just can't do the travel this year.
Yeah.
But I was glad to see the news that the next conference, Council Foods Conference, is going to be held there in Marseille, and
Right.
how they're going to fit it in this wonderful ecosystem that they're creating. I don't know, but I can't wait to see it. And I think of that as an example of bookmark solarcooking.org or solarcooking.fandom.com. And don't Google. Don't Google solar cooking.
And we certainly have a separate article about
Yep.
about that restaurant, and you can go. Easiest would be to go to the article about France, and there's all that news. So if something comes up about the new restaurant, whatever, in that particular country, then I'll add that news item to France, and so they can find it, and then boom, they can go directly to that organization. But I don't recall the fellow's name.
Oh, Pierre Andre.
Right, boundless energy,
Yeah.
because this didn't happen in the last year or two.
Oh no, he's been 5, 6, 8 years. He's been at it.
Right, and he's gone around with temporary, sort of flash mob restaurants where he'll set up and advertise you. He'll be in your community, and people come, and he's really worked hard to make solar cooking more recognizable, and it'll be fun to see how it goes with his restaurant.
Well, and that's an example of what's stored there as part of the overall history of solar cooking. That when we started, I said just the diversity. This topic is okay. A couple of cookers, you cook with the sun. No, there's the solar pasteurization, solar food drying, and now restaurants where it could be an economic engine in areas with a lot of sun. And to be able to learn that on the wiki, and it's going to be there. And
Even on a much simpler basis, like baking over the 3 stone fires, most of the food would be boiling in a pot or maybe kind of open in a pan. What they've not been able to do is bake very well.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we try to offer or show what can be done with solar cooking is also income generation. And it's allowed, again, primarily the women. That there's been several small businesses, primarily in Kenya this has happened, where they realize they can bake. And because in the past, to celebrate like a birthday, a very special event, they might go somewhere and buy a cake. That's a big deal. But they found, I mean, using a solar cooker, a panel cooker, not a parabolic, a big dish one so much, but a box cooker or a panel cooker, you can slow cook and make these cakes, and they've generated businesses, and so in their community, they become the cake vendors.
Yes.
You know?
Well, that's, I think of that as almost like it'd be the best advertising if people knew it was there for them as a business, but also just the promotion of solar cooking overall, to say it doesn't just stop with your backyard and feeding your family. Oh, not at all. It goes well beyond that. And that's all being stored on the wiki. We haven't talked much about the mechanics of it because it's there. It's already there. You can find stuff. We have the connection. They contact you for adding new stuff, maybe some revisions, updates. And that's why, I mean, it's a matter of, I wanted to talk about the mechanics of it, but the history of the wiki is the wiki storing all the history of solar cooking.
Right, there's so much there.
Yeah.
And we also have a whole separate article on restaurants and bakeries and broken down into geographical areas of regions around the world. What's happening in Latin America, and there'll be 4 or 5 or 6 little brief news items about bakeries or restaurants or whatever. And then of course there's links you can link and then go back to that individual restaurant or bakery and find out more about what's going on.
And events like Tucson for some 30 plus years had a solar potluck at a national park or something.
Yeah, it just happened about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
they still do it.
Yep, I think they tried it last year, and it was like the post-COVID, let's get going. And I talked to them, and they said, wow, it wasn't all that well attended. Well, how many? Well, maybe like 100. I mean, I don't know. It was like, we had a block meeting in Minneapolis. We had a new block leader who was a caterer. And his first block meeting, I said, how'd it go? Oh, man, I was bummed. I mean, almost no one showed up. Well, how many is no one? Well, 20. Well, you got a block with, like 24 households. It's probably half the block, So people's expectations,
It can vary, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, one of the strongest areas is in Chile. Balaseca, is that the community? Balaseca, I believe it is. Again, you go to the Chile article and there's all this, but there was a big promotion effort that happened in the 80s with providing solar cookers into that area because it's basically high altitude,
Yes.
treeless, very little wood supply, whatever. And people quite resourceful, and they picked it up and ran with it and formed sort of an internal group, the cookers of Balaseca, whatever, and then they have created a handful of solar restaurants, all kind of in that community. It has now become a tourist destination for people to go there and pick up on what's going on and eat at these solar restaurants.
I gotta find that place and book some plane tickets for Joe and me.
Oh, you'd love it. You'd love it. Yeah, check out the article in Chile. It's probably the easiest way to find it.
Yeah. Well, any other tips? Any other thoughts you want to share?
I'm still fascinated when I see solar cooking. It still seems magical to me. I understand the science, but and I'll get on the bandwagon as well and say the food tastes better. The food is cooked a little more slowly. I've actually designed a couple panel solar cookers, and in mine again with the double Pyrex bowls, which help to retain the heat. It gets up to 320 degrees, and so you can cook quite a bit with something like that. You can't necessarily fry it like you can with possibly with a parabolic cooker that will get much hotter, but then needs to be a little more readjusted to aim towards the sun maybe every 10-15 minutes. The panel cookers, you can set them out and they're good for an hour and a half, and most things will cook in an hour and a half, 2 hours. You might move it once slightly to point it a little bit more to the sun, but it's really sort of set and forget. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much.
Sure, happy to.
Yeah.
Provide a little more information. And again, please, Paul at solarcookers.org, send me information you have, or if you have a question, I'll be happy to get back to you.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Dan.
Sure.